Okay, guys, so to kick things off, I just want to say one thing. Multi-dimensional data universe. Yes, that's right. Did I just blow your mind? Are you intrigued? Probably not, because multi-dimensional data universe is a nonsense term that a former boss of mine, is a nonsense term that doesn't actually mean anything, right? But believe it or not, this is not a term that I came up with in some kind of like B2B tech fever dream. This is something that a former boss of mine demanded that we use as value proposition copy on our website at the last startup job I ever had. Side note, I rage quit from that job, and I have not had a full-time job since. And just to be clear, to my boss at the time, multi-dimensional data universe was inspired, amazing sales page copy that was going to revolutionize the industry, right? And back then, before I knew what I know now, there was nothing I could say or do to convince him otherwise. So, that was 6 years ago. Things have come a long way since then. I think it's pretty common knowledge now that your product messaging and your sales page copy can make or break the conversion rates on your website. And in fact, these days, the internet is absolutely overflowing with articles that are telling you and giving you advice on how to write copy that converts, right? Everyone has advice to give you. And the worst advice out there, historically, has been the blog posts that tell you that you can magically increase your conversion rates just by tweaking random words on your pages, right? It's 2018, guys. If you can't see what's wrong with a test like this, that's just random, I don't know what I can do to help you. Side note, this is something that someone suggested in one of my courses that we test in an email campaign. And I was like, in the body copy. I was like, we're not going to do that. The best advice out there tells us that in order to write truly compelling sales page copy, we need to understand the customer mindset first, and then write copy that speaks to that mindset in an emotionally raw, relatable way. Unfortunately, most of this advice is geared towards companies that actually have customers to research and listen to, which leaves the millions of new businesses who are trying to launch new products completely high and dry. And sure, there are success stories out there of those unicorn startups that got their value proposition right straight out of the gate, but they're few and far between. For the most part, most new businesses absolutely flounder and flail when it comes to trying to come up with product messaging and value propositions that their prospects will actually give a shit about. Instead, they will just go ahead and burn through capital trying to come up with product stories and taglines and value propositions and pulling them right out of their asses and then just trying to shove them down the throats of their prospects without actually stopping for a second and asking themselves, hold up, how do we actually know that these messages are the right messages we should be using to sell our product? So, just a quick sidebar intro. My name is Momoko. I am a product messaging and copywriting consultant. I am probably the most spreadsheet and stats-loving copywriter that you will ever meet. Unlike most copywriters, I don't actually like writing copy unless I have a really good evidence-based reason to write it, also because I'm lazy. And I am a borderline recluse, and I live in the woods with 3 cats. And my goal today, what I want to do is I want to challenge you to rethink what you think you know about how to write copy for new products. And I want to show you that even though writing copy for brand new products when you don't have a customer base to investigate and to like pull insights from, it is a bit of a free-for-all. But there are things that you can do to make sure that you are continuously homing in closer and closer on those messages that your prospects actually care about. So I have 3 goals for this talk today. Number 1, I want to take a little bit of time just to bust up some long-standing myths that there are about what conversion copywriting actually is and why it has a tendency to work, or why it works at all. I want to reveal the number 1 issue that is probably sabotaging all of your in-house copywriting efforts, whether you are working at a gigantic enterprise or working at an early-stage startup. And then number 3, I want to just show you some simple tactics that you can use to avoid this booby trap and actually choose messages that your prospects give a fuck about. Because that's the dream as the copywriter and the marketer. So let's start by talking about conversion copywriting. What is it really? I would say that most people, when they're talking to me about conversion copywriting, kind of like from the outside, they think of this. They think of running A/B tests. They think of tweaking headlines, tweaking body copy, and trying to stuff as many proven copywriting formulas onto the page as possible. When in reality, conversion copywriting is a far more in-depth process, and it usually involves some combination of the following 4 stages. Number 1, I feel like this is a recurring theme that's going on in all of these talks. Researching the customer mindset, right? Taking the time to gather the voice of customer data that you need to pull out the key pain points, the key desired outcomes, the anxieties, and the deal breaker needs that your target audience perceives or thinks about in relation to your product. Number 2, mapping out these elements, these insights, and these messages that you've pulled from the research into a cohesive sales narrative, one that, if you're smart, will position your offer as the seamless bridge between the frustrating, pain-filled world that your prospect is living in now and the utopian outcome scenario that your product can facilitate for them. Because I just want you guys to remember always that when you are writing copy, sales copy specifically, people don't want to buy your product. They don't want to have your product. They want to have the enhanced, improved life that they get from your product by having it. Step number 3 is, if possible, and when it's feasible, try leveraging known cognitive biases to boost the persuasive power of your offer, of your sales narrative, using things like the default effect, using loss aversion, framing, anchoring, all these things that we know about the weird quirks and the way that humans make decisions. Take advantage of those if you can. And then finally, always take the sum total of what you've created. Make sure that you go ahead and you measure the actual impact using, pick your poison, whatever kind of test is appropriate for your traffic, for your audience. I would say that when people start trying to do conversion copywriting on their own, they have a tendency to focus almost entirely on steps 3 and 4 and pay trivial lip service to steps 1 and 2, even though steps 1 and 2 are arguably a lot more important. This is mainly because I think that a lot of people look at conversion copywriting as some kind of a bag of persuasive hacks and tricks, as opposed to what it actually is, and what truly great copywriting has always been, which is an exercise in empathy, right? Because at the end of the day, what effective copywriting is, it's the art of understanding your customer's mindset, incorporating your offer or your product into the context of this mindset and scenario, and then just mirroring it back to your customer in a story or in a sales narrative. So, how do actual conversion copywriters who do this day in and day out, how do they go about doing this? We do this by listening and listening at scale, deeply, actively, as much as we can. And we ask strategic questions about what are our customers' pain points, what are their desired outcomes, what are their deal breaker needs, the risks and anxieties that they are feeling, the objections that they may have about using our product, and then finally the points of confusion that they might be dealing with when sort of navigating wherever we happen to be putting our offer, right? And we use a very simple, non-technical set of tools to be able to do this, to pull these insights from dozens, hundreds, thousands of customers at once. We use interviews, surveys, visitor polls, user tests, and things like keyword research. These are not new things, right? They take some elbow grease to do, especially like qualitative data that comes from surveys. Oh my God, it can take so long to analyze it sometimes. But it's pretty simple. But done right, listening to customers leads to big time results, and writing copy that is based on a listening-based approach can be amazing for your business. For example, petdoors.com, super boring product, it's pet doors. They submitted their homepage to be optimized by me in the live course that I did with CXL on product messaging and copywriting. And the homepage that they submitted to me, the value proposition focused almost entirely on the expertise and the experience of their staff, which, to be fair, was a pretty strong, unique differentiator because the expertise of their staff was way better than their competitors, right? So they figured it was a good thing to go with. Well, just by listening to their actual customers, we realized that their customers didn't give a fuck about the actual expertise of their staff. All they cared about was they wanted to get tough, water-resistant pet doors that would allow their pets to go in and out of the house so they wouldn't end up pissing on the floor. So we rewrote the homepage to reflect this desire, right, and these pain points. And boom, we get 145% increase in revenue per visitor attributed through that homepage, which was awesome. This listening-based approach to copy can also yield some pretty spectacular results, even for super complicated, obscure B2B tech type products, like SPS Commerce. SPS Commerce creates and offers like cloud-hosted EDI software for retailers, carriers, and suppliers in the supply chain world. It is not exactly something that just rolls off the tongue. They came to me with a PPC landing page that they wanted to have optimized for the class. The page itself did what most B2B tech pages tend to do, which is just spelled out a bunch of software features. And then we did the listening-based approach. We listened to their actual customers who were coming in and trying to get the product, and we found out that the people who were coming to this page did not give a fuck about the software features because they didn't even really understand what the product did. It was just software that they needed to have in order to do business with big box retailers like Target, like Costco, like Cabela's, right? It was just like they want to do business with them. Those big box retailers just came back and said, go get this type of software and we can do business. So they didn't care. All they wanted to do was just meet the requirements of as many retailers as possible with the least amount of effort and the least amount of cost. So we rewrote the homepage to reflect this, and we saw a 120% increase in the lead gen rate compared to their long-standing in-house average. And still to this day, the page that I wrote for them has become like the mother page of all like these other variant hyper-targeted pages that basically have the same message, but they're using it for different AdWords groups. And they're all, for the most part, outperforming by a long shot what they had before. So clearly, a listening approach to copy works, and it works really well, right? But here's the thing that people don't realize when we talk about these crazy outsized results that you can get from really good conversion copywriting. It doesn't work because it's relying on these proven formulas that end up in all these blog posts, right? It doesn't work because you're constantly doing A/B tests all the time. It works because it is an incredibly effective way to boost your resistance against an insidious, conversion-killing disease that each and every one of us here is infected by and lives with every single day, right? And I'm talking about confirmation bias. This has come up a couple of times in a couple of other people's talks, and I really think that we should dig down and not just say oh, confirmation bias, it's kind of a big deal. It is actually really a big deal, right? It's this tendency that we have. We are wired to go with our gut. And when we are challenged to not go with our gut, we will find evidence that supports our gut feeling so we can stick with our gut, right? So we are really wired not to make objective, empirical decisions. So that brings us back to new businesses who don't have customers to listen to, right? How do they deal with confirmation bias? What do they do to be able to challenge their own assumptions, right? The short answer is they deal with it really, really badly, super badly, right? When there is no giant pool of customers that a startup can just go and interview quickly or survey quickly and get into that flow of getting feedback, they will gleefully chuck the entire concept of being customer-driven out the window. And instead, they will latch onto an agency, and together, they will just start generating value propositions and product stories out of their asses. And what follows is a never-ending cycle of management making huge assumptions about what their customers care about, and then creative serfs, like copywriters and designers, just scrambling in their wake, trying to make whatever they come up with sound good, look and sound good, which I don't really even know what that means. I have been a part of this cycle, and it is very frustrating. Unfortunately, this has a tendency to really backfire when it comes to copy. I'd say best case scenario, you end up with copy that is pretty forgettable, right? It's just jargon-filled, and it's kind of just hard to understand. And the worst case scenario is you get copy like this, where they just don't really understand what they've put out there. Yeah. Copy fail. But to add insult to injury, this creative approach to copywriting, it's not just ineffective, right? And it's not just embarrassing in this case. It's also it can be hugely expensive, right? Just look at this landing page copy that Klinkle came up with. What the fuck does that headline mean? Right? If you don't remember, Klinkle was the notorious Silicon Valley startup that raised $30 million in investment before even building a product back in 2014. Then they launched a mobile app whose value proposition nobody could figure out, and then they crashed and burned in a blaze of tech industry gossip not even a year later. So, writing your copy in a bubble, on the one hand, it can run the gamut between being kind of funny to being financially disastrous. So, what is a new business supposed to do about it? Well, there is a very popular solution out there that a lot of people like using. I like using it. It's a great tool to use when you don't have other options, which is online review mining. Literally just you don't have customers, you think of the closest competitor product to you, you go and look up their reviews, and you just mine that data, that voice of customer data. You start pulling out those pain points, you start pulling together your sales page and making headlines, making hooks, right? Building a sales narrative that really is using language that's instantly relatable to your prospects because it came from your prospects in the first place. So, at first glance, it can seem like online review mining is just a cure-all for your copywriting woes, right? Because you don't know what to say on your sales page, you don't have customers to ask, not a problem. Just go to Amazon or TripAdvisor or Trustpilot, Yelp, whatever review site you need to, and just start pulling together those messages. Seems like it's just blammo, done, problem solved, right? Well, hold on. Because how do you know that the messages that you are pulling from these reviews are actually reflecting the messages that your target customer cares the most about? When you decide to pick messages from this review and not this review, are you making an evidence-driven decision? Are you making an objective choice? Or are you just falling for confirmation bias all over again without even realizing it? So I just want to quickly walk you through how this tends to happen, like in situation, because this used to trip me up way back in the day before I got wise to like, oh, how to, collect tidy data and like why you should not just like eyeball your data. Let's say I needed to write landing page copy or I need to figure out the value proposition copy for a new kind of water bottle, and we didn't have any customers yet. So okay, I'm gonna go to Amazon, get an Nalgene bottle, cool. It's got 454 customer reviews. Fantastic. That's more than enough to deal with. I got lots to work with. Let's get started. So, let's look at the first review. Holy shit, Linda Lee has a lot to say about water bottles. That is really surprising. She must have a lot of time on her hands. So, she's very happy with the product, and she's talking about all kinds of different aspects about it. She's talking about she likes the size, she likes the fact that it's clear, she likes the fact that the water doesn't have like a weird plasticky smell, which can tend to happen with water bottles. She likes the color, right? She likes that it's lightweight. So she's given me all kinds of messages that I can start playing around with. Great. Well, I'm trying to come up with a value proposition for this new water bottle. I'd like to have one, maybe two really resonant messages to work with to build that value proposition. She's given me like 7. So how do I know which one I'm supposed to pick? Well, I don't. So what you might think to do is like, let's play the game of numbers. Let's start looking through more reviews. Maybe if we keep reading more reviews, then the messages that really matter will just start floating to the top because they'll be the most prominent. Or the most common, I guess. So let's see Dan C. Thankfully, much more concise in his writing. And he says, first rate. These bottles are strong. Okay, so Dan C. really cares about the durability aspect. So he's like, durability is important. That matters to me. I need to have a water bottle that is strong. Awesome. So now we've got another tick for durability. Durability is in the lead. Okay, I'm starting to think that like my value proposition, it's coming together. I'm going to start thinking about making a water bottle that is strong, right? Let's look at another review just to check. Oh, okay, so this review now, it's talking about the odorlessness aspect, the no plastic smell stuff. So, okay, so now I got like 2, and they're kind of talking about some other messages in there also. Okay, I know it's only 3 reviews in, but guys, I'm getting tired. I don't know if I want to do this anymore. How many reviews did we say that this had again? 454 reviews? Fuck that. I got Netflix to watch. I am not going through all of that, right? Forget it. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a message that seems to stand out best to me when I'm eyeballing the data, and then I'm going to go and I'm going to look for other reviews that happen to say those same messages again in ways that I think they're colorful and cool, and then I'm going to pull them all into a swipe file, and then I'm going to start. Swipe file is just a place where you keep bits of copy that you think will work well for your copy page, just so you know. And then I'm just going to call it a day. Right? I mean, you know what? I'm going to go with the durability aspect. That seemed like it was the one that really works, right? I think that's probably most common, right? No. That is the moment. That is the moment where you are eyeballing qualitative data, where confirmation bias starts to creep up while you're getting lazy and you're deciding that you just don't want to deal with this anymore and just starts taking over, right? And this is why it is so dangerous to be relying on an online review mining strategy to figure out your value proposition when you don't have any customers. Because for established businesses, review mining is great. You can sanity check your assumptions and your bias by just using a well-designed survey and sending it out to your customers, right? Or putting up a poll on your website for your visiting traffic. But for pre-launch businesses, review mining can be dangerous. It's like sailing without a rudder. You don't have that North Star message that you know is the one that your target audience cares about most. So you just start kind of going around and you're like, yeah, I'm being data-driven. This is great. I'm not relying on my own instincts. I'm pulling things that other real customers say and I'm making it all come together. And really, you're not really being data-driven. You're just kind of taking the long way around of being subjective still. But you're taking like an indirect route. So at this point, you might be thinking, thanks, Momo. I work for a startup, and you've just basically told me that I am fucked. I don't want you to panic, because I got you. Because now I'm going to tell you about my super top secret, but actually totally not really, copywriting weapon that I use when I'm dealing with early stage startups. It's just pay per response surveys. I'm sorry if that's super anticlimactic, because pay per response surveys, are they new? No. Are they sexy? No. They are literally just those surveys that you just go and you go to like Pollfish or SurveyMonkey audiences and you just say, okay, I need this demographic, I need these attributes, and I'm going to put up some screening questions, make sure I don't get a bunch of noise, and then I'm literally just going to pay money to my prospects to answer questions for me. It's such a simple and affordable way to get voice of customer feedback from your target audience, and yet I don't know why, but even despite the fact that the most optimization-savvy companies realize how game-changing it is to be regularly surveying their customers and analyzing that qualitative feedback, I have not personally run into one startup, or copywriter for that matter, who has proactively gone ahead and used a pay per response survey just to sanity check their messages and what they want to do before they launch, what they want to say before they launch. I don't know why this is. I even put up a poll in the Copywriter Club. There's like 2,000 copywriters in there. They're great people. They're all really smart. And I just asked them, when you're writing copy for new businesses, you don't have any customers to survey, what do you rely on? The vast majority of them, there should be like, you should be able to see like the gradient. But anyways, vast majority of them say, I just rely on guidance from my client or my boss. Some of them said they rely on interviews with target customers, which is pretty good. Some of them said they rely on customer reviews. None of them said they rely on a pay per response survey. I don't know why. They're very cheap. So, to me, this is totally crazy because I work with pre-launch startups from time to time, and I will happily admit and openly admit that a pay per response survey has saved my ass when it comes to product messaging direction more than once, and my clients were very grateful for it. So I just want to quickly go over one example that came up very recently, which is PayTouch. They are a mobile point of sale system, which basically means they do payment processing. And they have a lot going for them, right? They have an all-in-one platform. It does CRM, it does employee tracking, it does inventory management, it does all those things. It's great. It's easy to use. There are no contracts, painless onboarding. It's very competitively priced. So as a copywriter, there are a number of different directions I could go for my value proposition. So which is the one that matters the most to my customers? I don't know. So I went to Merchant Maverick, and I decided to just start diving in to a bunch of reviews on point-of-sale systems. And I quickly fell into a maddening cacophony of just praise and complaints from thousands of reviews about, dozens, scores of different products, and realized that this wasn't going to work, right? So went back to the client, said, let's just spend a little bit more money. We'll get a pay per response survey going, and we can actually ask business owners, the people that you want to sell to, what do they care about most? So just going back and forth between ourselves, if you were choosing a new point of sale system for your business, which factor would be the most important to you? And we put that in a pay per response survey, and we sent it out to retail and business owners who had point of sale systems. We just listed the same options that we had before. Of course, we also had like other and all the other things to kind of like make sure that it's not too limited. And the verdict was that 40% of them said that what mattered most to them was how easy it is to use and how intuitive it is to use. What PayTouch was actually investing all their time in and had been investing all their time in previous to this was the fact that was the all-in-one feature of the product, right? But I didn't want to stop there. I said, okay, guys, clearly ease of use is pretty much the way that we should be going here. The all-in-one thing is probably not going to be working, especially because an all-in-one message is also one of the hardest messages to use as a differentiator, and I know this from experience as just being a copywriter. So I also just wanted to not stop there because confirmation bias could still leak into that previous question because it was a multiple choice question, right? So I wanted to give them the opportunity to just say whatever came to mind to them. So I asked them, describe in your own words what you find most frustrating or difficult about your current POS, and we got answers like this. Keeps freezing up on me, transactions are slow, goes down a lot, right? And by the time I had actually tallied up all of these messages and categorized them into themes about what kind of pain points people were dealing with, we discovered that two entirely new messages, one about the stability of the system and one about the speed of the system, came up with the difficulties that people were having, right? Ended up being the second and fourth most common message that people raised. And the hilarious thing about this is that when I brought this information up to PayTouch and I said, look, these are some messages that we are overlooking that we should be incorporating into our product messaging strategy, they were like, oh yeah, well, I mean, we know that point of sale systems break and crash all the time and that they're slow. They all are. That's why they call them POSs. They're pieces of shit. Like, that's just like a known thing. Like, they all suck. All the customers are struggling, right? And no one is solving the problem. And like, yeah, we can talk about that because our tech stack is really great, but like it's so basic. We don't want to talk about that. And it's a basic problem. It's a basic message to them, right? Because they're the ones building the features. So it's not interesting to them. But the reality is, when we did user testing, and I had business owners and restaurant owners looking over their old website and talking about the pains that they were experiencing, one of them actually said, having your point of sale system go down is basically about as bad as having a kitchen fire at your restaurant. It is a serious problem that they're dealing with that no one is helping them with. And it could have been a great message that we could start using on our website. So, last thing that I want to just talk to you about, oh, I'm way over. Okay, sorry guys. Last thing that I want to go over is I just want to make sure that you guys understand that paper response surveys are awesome for giving you messaging direction, but they are effing terrible at actually pulling out usable copy. Because as you saw in those like messages and those answers that I showed you earlier, they're basically like slightly above a grunt or like a nod. So review mining is still king when it comes to actually pulling up copy that you can use on your page. And that's why they go so well together. So I implore you, when you do have to write copy for a new product, try putting them together and see what magic happens. I was going to recap this really quickly, but conversion copywriting works when you listen. No one is immune from confirmation bias, so check yourself. Review mining is awesome, can be risky for new products. And finally, paper response surveys are handy sanity checks, so use them. So just remember, the next time your boss tries to give you a multi-dimensional data universe level headline to put on your homepage, now you know what to do in order to stop them.